Hi, everybody, and welcome again to another episode of the Risk Matrix with Mr. James Junkin and myself, Dr. Martin. Hey, James.
Hey, I'm on the road again. I
You
just got
are.
back to get on the road again. You know, the old
Where
Willie
were
Nelson
you?
song.
Where were you this week?
Man, I was up in Nashville, Tennessee. Uh, it was really great. We were at the International Performance Management Conference, EHS Management Institute. So I think it's the International Performance Institute, EHS Management Institute. I was a guest of Air Force up there, held a couple of sessions, a think tank session, and moderated a panel, and it was really good, really good. I enjoyed it, and I appreciate them having me. Met a really interesting cat up there, Paul Espinad, got his book. If you follow me on LinkedIn, I gave a shout out for Paul's book. Paul is the Vice President of Environmental Health and Safety and Regulatory for Diversified Energy Corp. And I'll tell you, Doc, I can't put this book down. And it's entitled The Heart and Soul of Safety, Leading Safety Performance from the Heart. So hopefully we'll have Paul on to talk about his book here in a few weeks.
I also heard that you met somebody from Highwire, mutual acquaintance of ours,
That's right. Corey
and he's also
Silverman.
going to be on.
He is going to be on. Highwire now is a Veriforce company. So we're working together with the Highwire team, and Corey was gracious enough to come out to the conference, and he and I presented together in a think tank about using worker qualifications to bring workers home from high hazard jobs.
Yeah, that's a hot topic now, and I know Corey's worked with a bunch of different companies before he came to Highwire. Um, working on like the turnstile and getting people qualified before they come to work. So he's really he's kind of getting to be an expert in that field, and I think we should have him on too. So we got a lot of good guests coming up.
A lot of good guests coming up. Guess what, Doc? We're approaching our 150th episode coming up.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
So I want to put a
I like
challenge
what
out
we
for
do,
our
James.
listeners. Hey, if you've got something, some ideas, what would be cool to do for our 150th episode, hit us up on LinkedIn or underneath one of our posts and on our LinkedIn page for the Risk Matrix podcast, or send us a message. Get in touch with us somehow and let us know if you have some cool ideas for what we should do for our 150th episode.
Yeah, and as always, we got a lot to say. So if you want us to say it, we'll bring it to you here. So let's start out today's episode with a rip from the headlines, James. What do you got?
Rip from the headlines. If you're not talking about the heat, you must live in Alaska. It's hot everywhere right now.
It is.
Extreme heat throughout the United States. And just in time for summer, the Biden era heat standard that's been much discussed, the fate of it is in doubt. It's in doubt. The House Education and Workforce Committee recently passed a bill along party lines, 18 to 15, to stop the multi-year effort. Now, I want to warn everybody up front. Just because there's not a heat standard doesn't mean you don't have a responsibility to protect your workers from the heat.
That's right. Still, I mean, the general duty clause is still out there, right? And it's still a
100%.
recognized workplace hazard.
And many states have their own individual plans. So I think the issue was some of the language related to acclimatization. That was a big one for some of us that live in historically hot states, is to defining what acclimatization means. But that's for another episode. But you have to take care of your workers when it comes to heat. Rip from the headline.
Well, I'll say this, James. If people want to learn more about this, I did an article on this exact thing about the vote and where the standard is, and boy, it got a lot of traction out there. So if you want to go and learn a little bit more about this, I have an article on my LinkedIn exactly on this, and I'm going to use the heat as a segue to the weather, for the topic of this episode. Near and dear to my heart. I'm from Wisconsin. There was a severe tornado there, touched down for 20 minutes and destroyed a whole area in Wisconsin. Terrible, terrible stuff. But why don't you bring us in with the weather, because you recently have gotten interested in the weather and
I,
storms, and and that brings us to business continuity and a bunch of other issues.
you know, I've always had a fascination with severe weather living in the South. Tornadoes is that's a way of life here. Um, Tornado alleys shifting south and east. That's normally something you see out in Oklahoma, on the plains. I talked to our good friend Richard Emberling. I said, "Man, y'all are tough." Every time I turn around, it's like some F3, F4 just tearing up stuff in Oklahoma. Um, Here, where we are, you don't get that picturesque tornado. Usually they're rain wrapped and often at night, and you don't see it coming. So you really have to depend on your weather personnel to give you good warnings, good guidance. Listen to your local emergency management companies, and then you see um, over the transition for the spring a lot of tornadic weather in the upper Midwest. I saw like 2 days ago, Delaware had a tornado. You hear me? Delaware had a tornado.
Delaware. Yeah.
Delaware had a tornado. So, what's this all mean? I wrote an article about the fragility of the assumed safety when it comes to severe weather at work. You might want to check that out on LinkedIn. But right now, you can get in the comfort zone because of El Nino when it comes to hurricanes. Right now we're going through El Nino. So what does that mean? Well, El Nino is when you have warmer than average ocean surface temperatures in the equatorial Pacific Ocean. Okay. And that causes weakened trade winds. So you end up with a lot of shear over in the Gulf of Mexico in the Atlantic basin. And that wind shear knocks the top off of these hurricanes from developing. We had Tropical Storm Bertha a few weeks ago, ran smack dab into Louisiana where I live. Um, Without El Nino, that had the potential to be a major hurricane. But just because you have an El Nino season doesn't mean you're home free from being prepared for hurricane season. And we're getting in the heart of it. Uh, August is a historically bad month for hurricanes.
August
Katrina,
and early September, right?
Gustav, yes. Katrina, Gustav, Ida, all were the same weekend, August 28th, 29th. All major hurricanes. Everybody knows about Hurricane Katrina. Hurricane Gustav was one a few years later. Uh, these are just in my areas, but I can go through Laura, Rita, Wilma, Ida being the most recent one. A lot of damage at my house and people that work for Bear Force that are around that area. Um, we all we all suffered through that just a few years ago. Ironically, that Ida was the strongest storm to ever hit Louisiana on record,
Interesting. Interesting. Not Katrina.
not Katrina. Katrina was a big storm. It was a 5 shortly before it made landfall, but once it made landfall, the winds were downgraded to a category 3. And when it made landfall, it landed in Buras, Louisiana, which is that boot that kind of sticks out in the Gulf of Mexico, and made a hard right hand turn into Biloxi, Mississippi. They actually had more storm damage in Biloxi and Gulfport, Waveland, Diamond Head, Mississippi. Uh, Traditional hurricane damage. It was awful over there. Um, they were on the western side, on the eastern side of the hurricane, which is usually the strongest side of the hurricane. So that put us on the western side, which is usually the weakest. What got New Orleans and was the flooding.
Yeah.
The flooding.
So let's put this in context of risk, right? Because that's what we kind of key on, right? weather is a huge risk, in a couple different ways for businesses, right? Um, Not only business continuity, which we've talked about at length on other episodes, but utility workers are probably one of the most, uh, they're the people that are out in this. Okay. Lot of construction sites hopefully shut down way before this, oil rigs, etc. People who actually work in outside, right? They're shutting down. They're exercising their business continuity planning and doing the right thing. But we have this high hazard job, utility workers to begin with, right? And then we put them in the thick of it. So,
Absolutely.
what do you say about some things that we can do to protect these workers or prepare them for working in inclement weather?
Well,
Really?
a lot of times you have cooperative mutual aid from other states. And that includes contractors. And anyone that's been through any type of major storms, whether it's an ice storm up north and massive power outages, or a hurricane, you'll have people from outside your area coming to your area. Many times they stage nearby out of the path of the storm in order to be able to respond. And you'll see bucket trucks at hotels 150 miles inland and just, you know, all hundreds of these things. And you're like, what are they? God bless these people, man, because once the power's out, it gets hot pretty quick, right? Modern America cannot run very long without electricity. So we appreciate those people coming and helping and responding. But there are unique hazards that they experience in storm work that they would not have in their everyday job. One of the biggest hazards I think utility workers face, the line workers, and I've got some in my family, is all these different generators that people are using uh, to power their homes, the back feeding of electricity into the line while they're trying to work. So if you're a utility worker, you really got to focus on energy isolation so you don't get an unexpected startup from these generators that people
Yep,
use.
it's a very
The
good
other
point.
thing, we've had workers actually killed because of traffic. I don't know what it is about storm. As soon as the storm's over, people want to get in their vehicle and go right around,
Go
right?
ride around, see the damage, right? Go get something from the store that, they're kind of stir crazy. They want to get out there. And, I'll make this comment, right? We bring in all these workers and there's a surplus of workers on the road, parking vehicles, doing line work. What we don't bring in is traffic control, right?
Right.
We have people going from spot to spot to spot to spot, and they're not setting up the typical work zones that they would, let's say MUTCD or work zones, or even having flaggers or whatnot. There's probably not a lot in the home states where these things happen, right? I mean, there's not enough to share, and we're not bringing them in. I want to mention too that you said workers are coming in from other areas of the country. People from my neck of the woods up in the Northeast a lot of times head down south when it's hurricane season, and they're not used to the weather down there. So that brings us back to our heat stress, right? And our not knowing the unpredictability of hurricane season at its finest.
Every hurricane I've been through, and I've been through a lot of 'em, right? The day after the storm takes every cloud with it and it's gone. And then the sun comes out and it is brutal heat, oppressive heat, no wind,
Humid humidity.
extreme humidity, no power, right? So if you're not prepared for that, or you're driving into some of these states that are having heat, and now it looks like it's all over the country, if you're planning the work, hazards are best controlled in the design and planning of the work right. We still have to go through some period of acclimatization for these workers, or you need to get them on some type of rotating schedule. The heat indexes are well over 100 degrees right now in the deep south. Um, every day, some of my friends are out cutting grass and, oh, I feel terrible. I got to go in, right? Just from a few minutes of exposure.
Mhm.
So hydration, rest, shade, all those things, it's too late to draw that up in the dirt once you get down here. You need to have that plan already in place.
So I guess that begs the question, right? What do these safety programs look like for, and risk preparedness look like for companies? Hopefully some of these utility companies are training not just for their area of operations in a normal situation, but they're training for areas of operation that are mutual aid, are that they're traveling to. I mean, I don't know. I don't work in the utility industry, but what would you think that a good training program or a good preparation program would look like for a utility company that they don't know where they're working?
Well, I think one of the things is you have to understand that these areas are that there may not be infrastructure. Um, After Katrina, it was hard
You lived it.
years, years for a few years. There's not going to be sometimes health care. So if somebody gets injured, you can't just run to the OC doc. There is no OC doc. There may not be an emergency room for many miles. So you need to be prepared to take care of first aid instances or instances, even those that are severe, that you can handle that till you can get someone to a area where there's a next level of care, right? Infection is a real thing. I got a staph infection after Hurricane Gustav, and it nearly killed me. I ended up in the hospital for 2 weeks. Um, Came up on my side, and it was awful, man. I lanced it, and I remember going down to the only doctors we had. Thank God for these people. Hospital was gone. They had a double wide trailer that was set up, and there'd be hundreds of people there every day, right? And they gave me some pills that didn't work. Then they started giving me IV antibiotics. I go down there one day, once a day, and I take an IV, and I just wasn't getting any better, and I was starting to run fever and all. And, um, my wife told my mother, and even though I'm grown, my mom and daddy came down and got me from Alabama, and they took me home, and they put me in the hospital. The last time my dad ever came to see me was, was down there to get me after that. So, you got to be prepared for those type of things. If you're going to come into an area, you may be on your own for a period of time. Same thing when it comes to feeding and well-being for your workers. Now, I think that gets in the logistics side of the house. Where are we going to stay? Uh, but you're in these areas that are heavily impacted. Sometimes they're rural areas that may not have. We call it the Waffle House index, right? So if Waffle House is open, it wasn't too bad.
That's right.
If Waffle House has a full menu, it's good. If Waffle House is on the limited menu with cash only, it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad, right? I'd have starved to death after Hurricane Gustav if it hadn't been for Waffle House. I can tell you that right there. But anyway, it's just about being prepared.
Cool. So, I mean, the other thing that comes up is the training programs that you need to put people through to prepare them for difference in climate, difference in hazards they may find. Right. I mean, the even the biological hazards are different in the South than they are in the Northeast. So I would think that if you're preparing your workers, and getting them ready to work in all parts of the country, you have to consider um, just about everything.
Well, I think one of the other things you need to think about when it comes to this, I'm sad to say, is crime. Crime that happens to me on the job is workplace violence, right? So in most areas, it's the ne'er do wells from outside the area that come in to take advantage of people that are in their weakest time, whether it's tornadoes, hurricanes, floods, whatever, right? So you need to be prepared for that. You now have some type of security plan that protects your workers from the recognized hazard, which in this case, workplace violence. So what does that mean? Making sure we've got our equipment locked down, making sure we're staying someplace that's not attracting or high crime area. I know of utility workers that have been robbed, right, by people when they've come into these storm areas. So it's a consideration that ought to be on your risk register. You ought to be talking about it.
You bet. So let's shift a little bit because I think everything rolls up to your business continuity plan, right? I mean, so what does a business continuity plan look like, let's say for a utility company? Um, because they don't have the luxury of saying our business continuity plan is we're not going to do this, right?
Well, they have extensive business continuity plans uh, that are on file and approved with the states in which they operate. Power is a life critical necessity, right? Um, Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of redundancy in the system for a lot of different reasons. That's a whole nother episode
It's a
about the
whole nother
politics
episode.
of building power plants, right? But there's not a lot of excess capacity in the power grid. So when things go down, as they do, there's a lot of pressure to get power restored immediately, immediately. And the public gets disgruntled after you've been hot for 2 or 3 days, or you've got a generator, right? But you got to have gas to run that generator. Well, if the gas station's out of power, you don't have a place to get gas.
Yeah,
And
get the gas out of the tank.
I have seen people drive 300 miles to have to get gas out of in these 5-gallon cans and 55-gallon drums and stuff. Um, After Katrina, people went as far north as Tuscaloosa, Alabama to get gas to run their generators, right? So there's a immense pressure to get the power back on and get it back on quickly. Uh, so that's part of your business continuity plan. But if you're listening to us and you're not a utility company, you need to have a business continuity plan that understands the realities of the situation, which is you may be without power. Your workers may be without power, right? Um, I have a business continuity plan for Mariner Gulf. I mean, we've been preaching have a business continuity plan for years, and then we had a massive hurricane, and we didn't have a business continuity plan, right?
You have one now, though, as a result
Yeah,
of that,
well,
right?
now, I mean, back then it was grab the computer, jump in the truck, and drive to Bama and try to get back going now. So, but now we got things in the cloud, and you got Starlink and all these things that are backup. So that's part of your business continuity plan. We've talked about this on other episodes. Think about when it comes to severe weather, do I have process critical uh, components or systems, right? That need cooling, that can't get to a particular temperature, that maybe it'll run on generator power. Okay. Well, what do we do if the generator goes offline? Fukushima, sometimes it's so obvious afterward, right? After the incident, right? It's just so obvious. Oh, we've got a backup generator. So if the main power goes out, we can get the backup generator on. Well, what happens if we got this big tsunami and it floods everything and we can't get to the generator because the generator's flooded and now we don't have any backup power? What do we do now?
You have a backup for your backup. That's what you're
Better
talking
have a
about.
backup for the backup. Indeed. Indeed. And I also think, part of your business continuity plan ought to be about the well-being of your workforce. Uh,
Amen.
Most people, it's not just your company got impacted, the community got impacted. Uh,
Families.
Absolutely. You know, so have something there to plan for these type is because not everybody can come back to work. And usually when we have a really bad storm, work's not the first thing on everybody's mind.
Yep. Yep. So I will say this. I mean, the weather doesn't seem to be getting better over time, right? I think we are now seeing storms in areas where we haven't seen them before. Like this thing in Wisconsin. A 20-minute touchdown of a tornado is it's pretty crazy to happen. Does a lot of damage. Um, People need to start taking into account that and I hate to say this, right? Because it seems so. obvious, but weather is unpredictable. Storms are unpredictable. And yes, do we have good systems of prediction? I would say, in general, yes. But we need to make sure that we're looking at these things yearly, if not sooner, and looking at what are the patterns in our area, what are the things that we should be considering that we didn't used to have to consider, right? Um, and updating these things and making sure we got the right training, we've got the right people, we've got everybody ready to go with the right information and the right mindset to tackle whatever problems come.
Well, that's the thing about emergency action plans. Most people have them, they get them approved, and they never talk about them or update them
That's
ever
right.
again. So I like to say it like this: you play like you practice, right?
That's
You
right.
play like you practice. So when's the last time you had a drill to make sure your communications plan was correct? Who are we going to call? How do we
Are the,
notify workers?
are the
You know,
numbers right?
are the numbers right?
Are our plans updated? Do we still have the owner who sold the company 10 years ago in there as the emergency contact, right? I mean, I've seen this a number of times when I go in to help people with their safety management systems, right? They're listing people that are either dead or no longer work for the company.
Yeah, 100%. I was just bringing up this article I wrote, Inside the Wind, Tornadoes and the Fragility of Assumed Safety at Work. I published it back in April in anticipation of tornado season, right? So this is a real deal about companies. December 10th, 2021, Amazon warehouse in Illinois hit by a tornado. The night shift never make it home.
Yep, I remember
What's
that.
your plan? What's your plan for understanding we've got severe weather? Like we can't depend upon workers to let us know based on alerts on their phone. Sometime I've been watching, particularly these storms in the Northeast, the ones in Delaware the other day. There was never any tornado sirens or declared warning until they had debris signatures on the radar.
Yeah. They
Okay,
weren't prepared.
they weren't prepared. Um, Mayfield, Kentucky. That was one of the longest long track tornadoes in history, right? OSHA came in and investigated because workers were actually discouraged in this instance for leaving or threatened with termination if they left.
Yep, I
Now
remember that too.
when you was in school and I was in school, when we had a tornado warning, we went in the hall, we put
Covered
a
our neck.
book over our head, right? We got down, and the principal went to the door and looked for the tornado. Well, this is 2026. You can't treat workers like this. It's all part of, do you have a plan? You have a plan. So nowadays, what happens, instead of doing that at school, at least in our areas, all through the South, they send them home. You got something from the Storm Prediction Center that says you are a 5 out of 5 for long range tornadoes. The school's letting out. That ought to be in your business continuity plan. It ought to be your emergency response plan. When do we send workers home? When do we stop working? Right?
Yeah. So
Um,
it's a wonder you and I are still alive growing up in the 70s and 80s, right? That was our plan, covering our back of our neck with our books and keeping our heads down in the hallway. The other thing was the if there's an earthquake, get under your desk. I posted this the other day kind of as a joke, right? It was you had a desk, it served as your earthquake protection, your hurricane protection, all kinds of
nuclear
things.
war protection.
Nuclear
Yep.
war,
Yeah,
active shooter, etcetera, right? It's a wonder we're still
sure
here,
did.
so
So wonder if we're still here. Hey, I had a friend talk to yesterday from Nashville. He does a lot of things to this plant up in Nashville, but sometimes they operate a forklift. And he was loading something in a truck and he bumped this natural gas line in the plant. And all of a sudden things started shutting down. And maintenance came down, checked things out. This guy's worked at the same plant for 20 years. And he said, Stan, you bumping that natural gas pipe, that taught me something. He said, what? We have an earthquake um, sensitivity device outside that once it detects an earthquake, it shuts the gas off the plant. I didn't even know we had that. So when you bump that with the forklift, it made it feel like it had we was having an earthquake. And they're in Nashville. I've never heard of such thing. I imagine they have in California. I didn't know they had that
Yeah,
in uh
interesting.
in Nashville. But again,
It's
that's
not a
something.
good way to find out, right? I mean, I
Right.
think I would wanna know I have those safety devices in place way before that.
I've been there 22 years in maintenance and just discovered due to some bizarre forklift incident that that's a capability they have. So see what I'm talking about? We get things, we put them in. It was a good idea at the time. We never talk about it. People leave the plant. We don't even know what we have.
The institutional knowledge is gone. So anyway, so let's wrap this up today, James. Do you have any shout outs to give to our sponsor?
Hey, thank you, Veriforce, for 4 years of powering the risk matrix.
Thank you.
It has been outstanding experience. They let us come on, um, talk about things that we're passionate about, talk about our views on different aspects of occupational safety and health in an effort to try to inform our listeners so that they can be better safety professionals, they can be better leaders, they can be better workers in an effort to fulfill Bear Force's mission, which is to get everyone home safe from any job, but particularly high hazard jobs. So thank you, Veriforce, for your commitment to workplace safety and the worker and for powering our podcast.
And if you like what we do, go on, watch us on YouTube. We got plenty of episodes up there, Spotify. You can ask Alexa, you can ask Google, you can ask anywhere you get your podcast, you can listen to us on the Risk Matrix, and we've got a ton of episodes that you can go back just about on every subject, safety and risk. We've got some great guests in those. So if you like what we do, go there, watch those things, listen to those things wherever you are. Like, subscribe. As James liked to say, your mama wants you to listen to the Risk Matrix, so get her on there too, liking and subscribing. And we thank you for everything that you give us back as listeners and as commenters on these episodes.
And in 30 days, like a long lost friend, it's back. Roll Tide, people.
Roll Tide.